All right. Hey, everyone. We're here today to go over, it's now episode 12, One Daily Thought, maybe 13, but we're going to talk about human signaling. So yesterday, if you didn't see it, we talked about signaling the animal kingdom and the concept of honest signals versus dishonest signals and a differentiator between those, which is primarily the cost of making said signal. So that sounds confusing. I encourage you to go back and watch the video from yesterday. It's only 5 minutes, so it should be a good overview, and then jump to here. So, human signaling, though. As, the animal signaling we talked about yesterday is mostly restricted to the physical realm. So, that's kind of the realm in which animals play. Humans are fairly unique in the ability to speak ideas and thoughts, and thus signaling enters the realm of ideas as well, which is, as you can expect, based on content of this channel, why we're focusing on it. Physical signals of strength are still around among humans. You can think of the best example probably being that really buff guy in the gym who's grunting really loudly while lifting heavy objects. You might think, okay, yeah, buddy, we get it. You're strong. Cool. Good job by you. And yeah, that's, in essence, signaling, right? He's trying to let you know that he's strong. So that's great. And again, we talked about the importance of cost when you're making a signal. So signals that have cost are inherently going to be more honest overall because they're harder to bluff. Bluffing is essentially dishonest signal. I use those as synonyms throughout. But you can think of the clearest example here would actually be buying a really expensive car or a really huge, beautiful house. Those are honest signals because they cost true dollars. And if you buy a $1 million car, it's obviously clear that you have $1 million to spend on that. And there's not really many good ways to bluff around that. I'm sure you can think of some if you're trying to game the system, but basically, create these inherent signals when we talk about money. It's easy to create these like truly costly signals that then are really quite honest as a result. But when we talk about ideas, that gets a bit more hairy. And I think I'm still undecided on whether or not this is a good thing or a bad thing, basically. But a lot of signals of personal values come without really any cost at all. So if you think about any social situation, simply speaking words is sufficient for you to signal a value. And because there's no cost associated with that, it's very easy to bluff with a dishonest signal. So the example that comes to mind for me, and I think will give us the best indication of this, is a lot of people signal and talk about the environment, how much they care about sustainability and protecting the environment. And it's kind of a, particularly within younger millennial circles, a very common way for someone to sort of, virtue signal is kind of, the true sense of the word. And in this case, I think, again, probably most of us, almost all of us could agree, protecting the environment's a good thing. We want to breathe clean air and blah, blah, blah. And so, I think what I would say is that talk on that aspect is actually literally cheap. Costs nothing to do and does nothing really as a result because we all kind of agree to this. So the natural question then would be, well, why are people doing this? And, again, it's virtue signaling. And so I think for me, the kind of test of this comes from example of two, again, that's kind of definitionally what's happening. I'd rather talk about kind of what that means for us, for people. And to me, there's kind of a contrasting example that I remember quite clearly, and I think kind of illustrates a bit of where to go next with this, which is two former colleagues, one of whom really cared about the environment and actually talked about it a lot, but also it was pretty clear if you talked with her at all, took a lot of steps to actually do something about it. And I'll contrast that. So, again, that's a case where, she she may be signaling when she talks about how much she cares about the environment, but she's taking steps to do something about it, and it's a good thing to do, and putting action behind the thought. This is costly, honest signal, and that's great. We need people who are passionate about things that will better the world, and people who go out and actually do that. Those should be paired together. It's an entrepreneur, that's mindset I try to bring to things. So the other example, another former colleague, and so not going to mention names here, but I remember this specifically in a meeting, and she's talking about how important environmentalism and sustainability and things like that are, and how companies should kind of highlight that as part of their mission. And then, I'm not kidding you, literally 5 minutes later, not even probably, went and threw her cardboard Starbucks cup in the trash can, as opposed to going across the room to the recycling bin that was right on the other side of the room. And so I have this knowledge in my head, and I don't want to bring this up to say that that's a sign that she's a bad person. We all virtue signal, and we all do things inherently that are going to be hypocritical to that to some degree. But at the same time, I think that that's absolutely something we should minimize, because in this case, it does undermine her credibility. If I'm going to listen to one of those two people about the environment, or actually probably extend that to pretty much any concept, I'm going to trust former coworker A a lot more than former coworker B. And I think that's clearly rational take on the situation if I didn't give you any further information. And obviously people are multifaceted, and there's tons of other dimensions here, yada, yada, yada. But if you look at that from your own perspective, if you want to be trusted, accepted, and kind of valued by society, it's best to actually live the values that you're preaching. So, within a realm, we can all talk about the ideas that we think are good for society, and this channel is kind of a lot of that. But you also have to go out and do stuff to make that happen. And certainly try to make sure that if you look at your own life and the values that you really talk about a lot and care about, that, one, make sure that those ideas are rationally based, but then two, go out and make sure that they're rationally based and you do believe them. Make sure you're actually taking steps to work towards those, and or at least not do things that are blatantly hypocritical to them. So I think when we talk about signaling, that's kind of my aspect. And when I hear sort of blatant and loud virtue signals, admittedly my alarm bells do tend to go up, because it's a costless signal, or there's no cost issue with it. So I think when you look at modern society, there's a lot of bluffing going on and a lot of dishonest signaling, and I would encourage you to avoid that. So that's all for today, and see you tomorrow.